Alright, so we're going to be going over problem number 47 on quiz 6. And the problem states, for the following exercise, find the domain of the function using interval notation. So when we look at f of x, we want to notice immediately that we have an even root, right? And so let's say we have a function a of x, and if a of x is the square root of x, we know that the domain for square root functions is defined as only the non-negative reals, right? So the domain of this function is 0 to positive infinity. And so when we're looking at f of x, since it also is a square root function, we need to take that into account, that the input has to be positive, or excuse me, non-negative, so 0 and any positive numbers. So really what we're looking to do is take the inside of the square root and make sure that the value that we get there is greater than or equal to 0. And from here, it's just a little bit of algebra. We're going to try to isolate x. So we subtract negative 4 on both sides. We get negative 3x squared is greater than or equal to negative 4. And then now we're going to divide by negative 3 on both sides. And recall that when we multiply or divide by a negative number and we're working with an inequality, it flips the inequality, so we end up with x squared is not greater than, but less than or equal to negative, 4/3, because a negative divided by a negative is a positive. And from here, we want to get the x squared by itself, so we're going to square root both sides. And recall that when we take the square root of x squared, that is defined as the absolute value of x. And so we have the absolute value of x is less than or equal to the square root of 4/3, which is the same as the square root of 4 over the square root of 3. And so the top simplifies at least to a regular 2. So we get 2 over square root 3. And we have an irrational on the bottom, so we want to rationalize our denominator. We'll multiply the top and bottom by square root of 3. And so this is going to give us 2 square root 3 over 3. And so we have the absolute value of x is less than or equal to 2 square root 3 over 3. And now that we have the absolute value by itself, that just tells us that x is less than or equal to 2 square root 3 over 3, and x is greater than negative 2 square root 3 over 3. And so if we wanted to visualize this with a number line, we know 0 somewhere in the middle. We have 0 somewhere in the middle. We have the negative 2 square root 3 over 3. So we'll just put that somewhere over here. And then we have the positive version of it somewhere over here. This one tells us x is less than the positive version, so it's going this way. And then x is greater than negative 2 square root of 3, so this way. And because we are working with greater than or equal to's and less than or equal to's, we have brackets, right? So this is just trying to show you visually what's happening. And so they're basically going to collide, right? And since we're using interval notation to describe this, all that really looks like, so if we wanted to say the domain would be, and you can put D or you can write domain, whichever one works for you. And all that would be is bracket, because we're working with greater than or equal to negative 2 square root 3 over 3, comma, and then positive 2 square root 3 over 3, because we only want the values that are between these two real numbers. Okay? All right. So I'll stop the video here and create another one for problem 48.